Guys, welcome back. Thank you for stopping by and checking out this video. I want to dive into the part number 3 of the Spitfire contest. So of my entry, my composition. And so last time I talked about the first cue, and today I want to show you the second cue. So basically the second part. There are basically 2 parts combined, or even 3. We will hear it right now, and we'll play it through and we hear it, but I want to combine it in one video today, so we are not splitting it, so the whole thing into infinity. And if we look further, so into the future, we will have another part, so part number 4. Then we go into the trap part, where I have a trap beat going on, so this will be part number 5. And then I will finish it with part number 6, where I show you basically the ending with the bass synth rhythm what I had, and the final showdown where we see the car exploding and crashing. So I will play the cue, and and then we will continue, and I will show you the instruments I had there, and we dive in. I need first to remember what I did weeks ago, but I will show you the instrumentation and try to remember what my thoughts at this point were, and I hope you can take something away. Okay, I will stop talking and I play this cue. Let's go. So this was the second cue. A couple of changes there, and at the end, a big change to the rhythm. So at the end, again, I show you. We go into the 6/8 bar. Da 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 bam ba da 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 ba da 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 da. So 6/8. I change from 4/4. I had 4/4 here. In the first cue I had 7/8, 9/8. Then I had 4/4. It worked with the picture. So at this point, it's like you need to know film music should not be always be crazy in terms of rhythm changes or difficult harmonic stuff, and it can be sometimes really easy. So it was my German. So basically you can choose 4/4, and if it works to the picture, why not choosing 4/4? Especially if you work later on with tempo. So of course this is the mixing session, I don't have the tempo, but definitely if you have your MIDI project, so your virtual instruments session in front of you, And if you realize, okay, 4/4 actually works for this scene, but sometimes you get off to important points, you just can say, okay, let me try out to increase the tempo or decrease the tempo. And then you just try to figure out what works, but what not. And if you realize, okay, maybe it's too obvious, or that you just start to increasing the tempo to, let's say, from let's say 120 right now to 160, it's a huge difference, right? So if it works, of course, you leave it like that, but in most cases it's just too crazy, so better to either go to another bar. So for example, from 4/4 just to make extra bar and make it to 5/4 maybe at some point, and then going back to 4/4. It really needs to make sense, as I said before in the last part, that as a film music composer or a composer in general, always remind yourself that there is a possibility that at some point people will ask you to for the notation. And you, of course, as a composer, at least to some degree, you need to know what is possible to play with an instrument and what players, general, like good, solid players, can play. And so what makes sense from the point of view of a musician as well, because you are a musician at this point as well. You're maybe not super good at a specific instrument. You don't need to be as a composer, but still your main goal is, of course, to get to the point where you know, okay, this is possible to play with this instrument and this is not possible to play with an instrument, aka meaning that does it really make sense or does it not make any sense? I go to the strings. So let's look where we got at the strings. So the cue starts with the orchestral essential strings affix. Yeah, perfect. Because again, if you do film music, sometimes you have these scenes where something is going on, but it's not really where maybe not a lot of things are happening. So you don't need actually to have chords in between or something else. Sometimes it just makes sense to have kind of an atmosphere going on. And in this case, for me at least, it worked with this string affix. And then I combined it with this arpeggiated synth, and I just switch on the instruments folder. I play it together. So the arp synth is coming in, the FX ends, and then the synth becomes louder and fades away to the next part. Yeah, so basically you try to go with the music, or in this case with the synth, into the next scene, and you try to create tension, and you can create tension even with one note. I didn't change anything, so I'm just playing, I believe it's an F. And yeah, so what I did is actually I can show this as I see right now. So first, it's obvious at some point we have this volume change, so it goes up in volume. Yeah, and then the next scene comes in, and then I fade it out, and I wanted, because I didn't like the sound at the end of the synth because it goes down in volume. So I took a filter, and then I just played with a filter. Basically, I tried to cut out every so the heights of the synth, and of course just taking out the how do you call it, the what's the word? I always forget some important words actually. Harmonics. Yeah, I got the word. So forgive me, please. So when you get rid of the harmonics, and harmonics usually go up to 10K, 20K, you get rid of this harmonics, and the synth becomes more of a sine wave kind of, and it's more clear as a sound in general. So I just created this, yeah. I just help with this volume, and I made it the same, just help with the filter going down, yeah, with this volume drop. So this was the sound. If I just leave it, if I switch it off and play it again, you see it doesn't fit anymore because it doesn't fade out, even if I do it with the volume. So yeah, at this point I just took the filter and yeah, just went for this more bassy sound. Cool. What's next? Switch it off again. We are going to the strings again. Cool. Funny stuff is going on, especially at the end. So again, I played a lot with this FX stuff, tried to make it more unique, tried to make something different, not only music, try to experiment if you have these kind of scenes, these kind of movies, and actually music in general. Don't focus only on instruments, like playing the instrument. Always try to figure out what can I do as well to make it more unique, to make it more special. And of course, the one part could be, of course, to try to let's take a piano for example, or let's stay with the strings. So you of course have different articulations, so you can change the articulations. You can have as I have here collegno, and you have the ostinato short, so basically kind of a pizzicato sound, not the same, but sounds like this almost. And so basically changing the articulations, this can work. And then of course figuring out what else the instrument can offer for as a sound source, right? So again, it's a lot of experimenting, and as well going more in depth in the libraries you already have. This is actually one of the topics that actually I recorded the video when I said stop buying the plugins you don't need. Actually, because you already have them. And the same goes with sample libraries. It's not maybe the right place to put this information right now in the video, but just to again to say what I realized with the years. And I bought a lot of libraries, maybe not as much as many other composers out there who do it full time every single day and do nothing else. However, I still have a lot of libraries, and even if you buy one single library, for example, this Albion 1, which I used here a lot, Albion 1 has so many things inside, and your job, I believe, is when as well when you pay money for the library, no matter how much you pay, but the more you actually pay, you actually need just to figure out what the library has to offer. You need really to dive into what is possible with this library. Not only looking for good sounding patches, which is of course one of the first criterion when you buy the library, of course, right? So you go for a specific sound, or you don't have an articulation maybe that sounds much better with this library instead of using another. Of course, again, these are all the basically the first primary buy. How do you say, like, the why you buy these libraries, right? But the libraries always offer much more. The people who record these kind of libraries, they worked on it for many years sometimes, and if somebody worked for that long amount of time, it's not only just one patch, and it's not only 10 patches. You have a lot of sound design going on. You can manipulate so many things inside, and you just need to go and dive in and see actually how much the instrument really offers. And I always, myself, I always sit there, and when I open, for example, as well, Orchestral Essentials, even if it's a spare library that first, on the first view, doesn't offer you a lot. So basically the basic orchestra and the patches, etc., etc. But if you dive more in, you can still manipulate some things inside. And of course, especially with this library, at some point you go into this combination of patches, meaning that you just hit one note, but you stack some patches over another and create a super unique sound nobody used before. And this is what people often forget. They just go for the next library because they hear this amazing sound. However, in most cases, you can still create the sound with the library you already have. So please don't forget that. It's not that you need to stop buying libraries or whatever. No, I don't say it. But the main thing is that I realized, at least with myself, and I see so many people just talking about, yeah, the next library, the next library, the next library. But the thing is, again, you can buy all these libraries, you can have all these libraries, but it doesn't make you a better composer. You need to think about how you can put just more time into, again, trying to figuring out how the library really works, and more than what they offer in the first look. This is your job, I believe. So I definitely like to dive in and check things out that people actually work for many years, because again, a lot of people just miss these little things that actually you already again have in your tools. So yeah, let's finish this conversation and we go back into the composition. So what notes I have played? So so yeah, ostinato, I just wrote it here, strings high ostinato. This is my motive here for the scene, because the cars are driving away and the chase scene really begins at this point. And And yeah, so I just took this ostinato, and when first, so basically the violins and violas, I would say I just named it high. Again, I said it in the last video, I will not say the same stuff. If you watch this, the second video, you already know what I mean. So I played this ostinato in the high register, and then I went for the cellos and I went for the basses. And they play the same stuff. Nothing special, it's just rudimentary orchestration. This is really, yeah, just basic stuff, but it works when you try to not, again, overthink the process, but think about, okay, what can I do with the notes that I already have? Even if it's a loop for 8 bars or so, try to make the next 4 bars something else. So even if you use the same notes, but maybe you change the instrument or you change the register, whatever it is, maybe you can even just say, okay, I don't play the F, C, D flat, I play C, 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 F, and B, D flat. So you just change the notes for the harmony. However, you still do basically the same. Cool. Yeah, at the end we again have these risers. Yeah, and then I have this tremolo because, again, this scene, in my opinion, needed a little bit of yeah, this tension, and with tremolo you can really create that. And then the scene stops and we have another scene. So tremolo is a really great way to create tension because you have this slide between the notes. And I combined it with, basically it's a pizzicato kind of stuff with this FX. So when I just play this, you know what I mean? So basically a lot of strings are playing pizzicato. This is what I hear, and this is the effect. And I didn't just put the tremolo and said, okay, that's enough. Sometimes it can work again, but what else? What you can make more unique, more musical? This is what the what film music is about. There are so many small nuances. If you are just starting out with this thing, it's not like that you try to, or you need to think about all of this, but this is definitely something you can implement in the next production, or at least try to think about that it's possible to make. And yeah, just again, what can you do? Ask yourself, what can you do to make it more special? Cool. Then let's go to the brass. Not a lot of stuff is actually happening here. One note. Wow, great. I did a great job. Brass, yeah. So basically it's built up to the second part of this scene. The first note, let's hear it in context actually. Okay, it's not actually a huge impact, but I still, I don't know why I just left it, because I have yeah, tutti isn't playing, it's muted. I have a hit, timpani hit. Yeah, just maybe a little support here, not something special. And it doesn't really sound actually that nice. yeah, it's like maybe I had to move it a little bit more up into volume, like the second part. Yeah, so it's fortissimo, and now it's really becoming more loud, more intense. However, again, these are the things you can you can like in this review. I see what I did weeks ago, and I can reflect on what I did, because it doesn't mean that I did everything perfect, or like what is the book is writing about, right? So it's a lot of reflecting. This is what I don't know if people are doing it, but I try to always say to everyone, reflect on everything you do, not only in music but in life in general, because if you check things out what you did, let's say 2 years ago, you will see how much you have improved, and what you do really really good today, what you didn't do or haven't done 2 years ago. Super super crucial to just become better over time, to reflect on the things you did before. So here maybe if I just play the whole scene and just mute the brass, nothing will happen because it was so quiet, right? So I just basically can say mute. I don't need it. And this is what, for example, you do a lot with if the music will play it somewhere else, where a notation should be provided to the players, to the orchestra, because the orchestrator, who is really doing nothing else in his life, just saying, dude, I like your music, but in this part or this scene, it doesn't make any sense why you put this note, right? Or at least at this volume. It doesn't make any sense, it doesn't make any impact. So as you see, I just muted and nothing happens to the overall sound, because I created this with actually other instruments, not with this trumpets, right? Here the trumpets, of course, have a more important role because they play the accents. So I just mute them. I just mute the group and I play the whole thing. Right? There are no trumpets. There are no other brass instruments inside the group. When I'm unmuted, it's a huge difference because we have them back. Yeah, so again, this is a lot of trial and error. There is no right or wrong. It's just your personal taste. Because again, there can be someone who can say, Alexei, you could actually mute the brass and it will still sound fine. Whatever. At this point, it was just my personal taste. And sometimes you hear your music a couple of weeks or a couple of months, sometimes years later, and you think, maybe some things you would definitely do different. And again, reflections come in, meaning that maybe in another project that will be similar to what you did in the past, you could still change the things to your liking, because again, your taste, it changes with time. It's not like what I do today, I will 100% do the same stuff in let's say 10 years, right? So just think about it. I mean, it's really logical. So, and at the end, we have this build up with the brass. Yeah, so basically they copy the same rhythm what the strings had before, if I play them together. Yeah, this is what it sounds like when they play together. I play F and G flat. So it's like Joe's from John Williams, right? But other notes. But this interval, so the small second, it creates tension again. And this is what was needed for the next, or at least at the scene, to go for the next scene, because I needed to create tension. And you can only create tension when you use the right combination of the right notes and especially the right intervals. And the small second is definitely one of the intervals that creates tension. So if I know it, why not use it, right? So it works. Just try again, to experiment what is working for you in terms of this sonic sound creation. Again, it's not always about thinking, does it make harmonic sense? Because sometimes you just can combine notes that actually don't make a lot of sense. And you can actually add another note, and then you stack this chord basically, or the intervals, and you create something else. And there are so many possibilities, because it's just again trying to figure out what works in the scene or not. If you have, of course, a motif like what I had before, F, C, D flat, C, so basically a solid scale that I use. In this case, it was so for the whole scene I used Phrygian. And this is harmonic, the harmonic house, right? So where we always come back to, but in the middle, especially in film music, we have sometimes things going on that you can't just replicate with one chord or even one scale. Sometimes it's a combination of many different things. A lot of experimentation. This is nothing that somebody can teach you. You need to find these sounds, these creation sounds. You need to create them yourself. Cool. What else? I will not go to the tutti hits for too long, because they just play the accents. Yeah. So again, I said it in the part 2. I will not dive too deep into the thing, but the tutti hits here are really just for. I mean, it's in the name, right? Tutti. A lot of things are playing, or a lot of instruments are playing octaves in most cases, and they play hits, meaning they play accents, and they help the orchestra to present these accents for the music, for the scene. And these tutti hits from Project Sam, they are really nice to just give this body and this thump for orchestra, because if I take them away, it really sounds thin. Okay, we are back with the percussion, and I will play actually the percussion. I will play the drums I had inside, and I will play the sound effects folder. So basically it's a combination of trailer hits and orchestral effects, swells, etc. I just play the first. So basically we will first hear the SFX. I will leave it here at this point for a second. So here, for example, I had this trailer hit actually, and and the problem was with this hit, I didn't want to have this impact before. So yeah, this sample had this impact, and if I turn it back, I didn't want to have these low impact inside. So I went for this fade in because again, this scene seemed to not really want this impact because nothing was really in the scene that needed this low end impact. So I decided to play with this fade. So what I create with the fade, of course, I create a kind of a riser or opening effect for the next cut. I used later on the swells. Yeah, and I used again a swell or from the Orchestral Essential library. So the swells here from, it was again Spitfire and Orchestral Essentials with this dark patch. I used this patch for this rising effect. Yeah, and then we go for basically the whole part. Let's play once through. I stop here. So in the first part we had the action strikes, the ensemble. Again, I said last time, if you use these kind of loops, libraries, just try to come every time with something else, not that somebody else is knowing exactly what library you use. Of course, the sound you can't really change all the time because you use this library because of the sound, right? But not that somebody else will tell you, dude, I heard this loop over and over, this composer used it, that composer used it. Try always to be unique. This is what I say. Do something else. Do what somebody else is not doing. And this is definitely possibility to change the loops inside these libraries. It's a perfect library for these kind of things. And what was important for me is to create not only this loop, but the driving effect, meaning that every time on the one I have this low end hit from, again, from the action strikes library. So if I switch it off, right, we just have this loop, but if I turn it on, so it's every time on the one, pum, pum. It's kind of a pulse. It's maybe not the pulse what the ensemble is playing, but still I needed something in the low end to make it more, yeah, just to make it more impactful in this cue. And this was the perfect, yeah, just the perfect chance and possibility for me to implement this hits on the one. Again, maybe just a small information on the side. If you use this kind of low hits, try to not overuse them in terms of to use them like too fast, right? Because they have so much low end, and the low end, if you really want to have more yeah, deep and clear low end, if you just overuse them in terms of that you not only play them on the one, but let's say every beat, it can be that this low end is still going on, and then you combine the second note after it. So you play the second note after this first one, and you hear the low end comes more and more, so basically creates muddy mixes there. And of course this is one thing just to keep in mind, that if you use this kind of low end stuff, not to overuse it, because it won't have more impact. Actually, the impact is always only there when you use them sparingly, right? So just on the 1, maybe on the 3, and in between you have these libraries or the ensembles that are not really low end present, right? As the ensemble, it doesn't have a lot of low end as the hit. So of course this is the perfect instrument for completing the rhythm in between. Cool. And then I play the drums, just the drums. Yeah, basically just a rock groove, and nothing special. Actually, I just thought why it's so dry, but this was actually my intention back there, because if we play everything together, the strings, they have so much reverb going on that if I will have the drums too reverby, right? So I just use more reverb on the send, the mix really can become really muddy. Again, because we have so much reverb going on in the strings and in the brass section. So this is what I said, and especially this ensemble that is playing, this is what I just not wanted to do. So actually when you hear these kind of rock drums, usually you have much more reverb, but I just wanted to make them present, to make them more in the face. And of course, again, if you say you have a rock song, a really rock song, you need to make them sound more reverby, right? Because you don't have a lot of reverb on the other instruments. You basically have a reverb on the voice and sometimes guitars, but the drums is with all other instruments, there are not a lot of instruments. But with the orchestra setup, again, what I said before, you have so many other instruments, and you need at some point just to decide what you actually want to achieve. And again, it can be that the next time I say, well, maybe I will rethink the scene, because the scene needs more reverb on the drums. Instead, I will make the strings sound less reverby. So again, sometimes it's just a personal preference, but at this point, again, I just decided and said to myself, I always have the reverb, so I will not put extra reverb on. And actually, the drums already have, right, the reverb. It's not really hearable in the mix context, but they still have reverb. So for me it was enough, and the drums, I will show you the mix of the drums. So I have the drums, and I used, if I play it here again, I compressed them a little bit, not too much, because I already compressed them when I composed, so when I laid out the MIDI, because you have so I used the library, if I'm not mistaken, so it was from Native Instruments. The drum pack was I think it was this studio drum, a white drum maple set. I'm not really sure, but what I did inside there, 100%, I already compressed them much more than the usual patch already compressed them, right? And here I just help out to again to push them a little bit more forward, because I played here in a full mix and the guitars are going on and the orchestra, and when you say you want to have the drums in the foreground, again, what is creating this foreground? And foreground is volume, of course, so pushing them more forward, then using less reverb, because usually if something is more in the foreground, it has usually less reverb, and compress them a little bit more so they are a little bit more in your face. This is the basic idea when you are working with this full mixes. Switch it off, and then do we have something else? The third part of this cue. Let's play it again. Again, used to hear the hits. Tension creation. And then the rhythm change I said in the beginning of the tutorial, of the review. This is not a tutorial. I used here at the end the trailer hit from the library. It will be great to remember. It was definitely from Keep Forest. I'm not sure which one it was. But it doesn't really matter. Again, trailer hits, the Brahms, right? So if I just play. Really powerful. Again, there are so many libraries that have these Brahms. Sometimes it's overused, but it sounds amazing because you again hit one note and you can't actually do anything wrong. But in this case, I just wanted to create this impact because the scene changes and we see the second. The third already, I think, the third part of the chase scene. So it was an important moment for me because the cars are coming back, and yeah, I just wanted to have an impact. It's the scene where she is pushing the ceiling away, and it drops on the floor, and then you see the second you see the cars who are chasing them. So this was this moment. Then we got bass. There is nothing. I didn't use bass, only at the end. We'll do it in another part. And then I have the guitars, and I have the piano again. Yeah, actually, the funny thing is, I didn't have to look. Have I used the EQ? It really sounds a little bit more nasal. So a lot of 1K 800 800 hertz area. I didn't really used a lot of EQ actually in this. Let's look here. Yeah, it's basically I just used the dynamic EQ for the low ends, so it doesn't bother the kick drum actually, because the kick drum is triggering. Let's look again. What is triggering? Sidechain. Rock kick, right? And what else? Trap kick. Yeah. So basically every time when the kick is playing the guitar, the low end is dropping a couple of dBs to not staying in the just not to be present in this area at this time. So the mix becomes more clear, especially in the low end in this case. However, what I wanted to say, I didn't really EQ a lot of in this mix because it took me a lot of time to compose. It's not. I'm not. This is not an excuse. But I just tell what actually I went through. So I composed it for 5 days, the whole cue, which is great because now I more or less know for so how much time I actually need to make this kind of stuff for myself. Again, because you don't have a lot of opportunities as a small producer, right, or composer, to have this kind of scene. And you for especially film music is something different. If you are going for, let's say, a trailer track you can compose in 1-2 days. It's possible, maybe not the production, of course. It sometimes takes you 3-4 sometimes even months, depending on the production. But this film music stuff, it's really tricky, especially if you use a lot of orchestration, a lot of instruments. So what I did is I composed it for almost 5 days, and I took 2 days to for the mix, not the full days, of course. So I didn't sit there for 8 hours. At least not the second day. The second day was just checking if I was more or less happy with the overall sound. But I applied, especially because it was. I said for myself, okay, 1 week is maximum what you will do with this cue. And I said to myself at some point at mixing that I will apply my 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule means that 80% of my final result is generated in 20% of actually the time I'm putting in beforehand. So as well for composition, the composition I did basically the whole cue I did almost in the first day. So I had 70% easily. Not the whole, of course, but more or less the track was laid down 70%, I would say. And mixing the same thing, I did almost everything in the first day. And of course, sometimes 5-6 hours are not enough to go super deep inside and to make EQ moves everywhere on every single instrument. Because at this point, for myself, it was more important to create a solid overall mix that work from the beginning to the end. Because sometimes if you combine, I talk now a lot, but it's super important right now for you to understand it. If you put a lot of cues inside one project, the first important thing that you need to be able to do is that your mix is sounding from the beginning to the end as it's from one album. So it's I hope you understand what I mean. So you play the first cue, you play the last cue, and you think it's one thing, right? So it's one from one project. It's really hard actually to achieve it if you combine a lot of libraries for a long amount of time. So you switch the libraries, you switch the genres, you switch the instruments here and there. and the orchestration, it's really hard to achieve for these kind of mixes. So I applied my 80-20 rule, and the 80-20 rule again says that don't bother yourself or don't waste time with these little things. So here, for example, if I just take the guitar, I play the guitar, I solo the guitar, and yeah, just play it. I can, actually I pushed it. That's funny. I mean, I'm hearing it right now with my headphones, but maybe I would go down with, so drop in volume at how much? 4.5 kilohertz. But yet again, sometimes you hear things one day a little bit different than the other day. So it's not that every time you do the right stuff, this is what you need to take definitely out from this session. Because what I hear today is not what I heard 4 or 5 or 6 weeks ago, right? So again, back to the 80-20 rule, meaning that don't waste a lot of time, especially if you have a certain deadline. At least I set the deadline for myself that I wanted to finish it on Sunday. I said to myself, don't waste time with this little EQ moves, because the most important thing was I will show it here again, but I will explain it in another session. The most important part is here. It's called all, so basically it's my master chain. This is the most important part. A combination, of course, with the levels, setting up the levels. Of course, I EQ'd, right? So I had my plugins here and there, and yeah, I compressed, and here the groups the same. Actually didn't do a lot, right? I have here some dips, and yeah, I use a lot of dynamic EQ, for example, to make it more musical throughout the mixing stage. But again, don't waste too much time if you are under pressure. At least set your limit for a project. The most important thing is how it sounds together, not how it sounds on alone. So if I hear the guitar again, for me, you can say, yeah, maybe it's now too nasal, or take out a little bit of the 800 area. Let's check that out. On alone, it's, you see, just 4 dB, it's too much. But when I play it with the whole mix, maybe even better. I mean, now it's a little bit more clear, but this is what I said before with the 80-20 rule. If you don't have a lot of time, don't waste your time with these little things. These are really little things. It's not perfect, okay? This is what I know myself. This is not perfect, but together it sounds definitely what I would say. I'm not blaming myself. This is what the whole thing is about. If you know you can do it better, that's fine. But if you have a limit, you have to accept the fact that you have the limit, and you don't have a lot of time to finish every single move on every single instrument to make it too perfect. Okay, this is what many people, and I did it myself many years, just waited so much time with these little things. If I have the time, of course, I know I write down the things I want to change, and that comes to my mind. Of course, this is important. But and the first thing is, try to, if you mix your session, your projects, no matter if this film music or something else, hip hop beats, whatever it is, don't waste in the first stage too much time on these little moves. These little moves will disappear after you hear almost the final result, right? And this final result, you can do it already in 2 or 2.5, 3 hours maximum. It's possible. And from there, you start to maybe a little invest a little bit more time into this little things I said right now. Yeah, but the whole mixing, again, 80/20 rule, this is something what too many people, I think, still not doing, or doing it not from the right, or don't see it from the right angle, not the right point of view. This is my opinion because I did it for many, many years. This is what when I was in college and studied all these things, this is what nobody said. Yeah, this is what nobody mentioned actually, and this is what actually comes not from the music production or composition side. It comes just from the personal development part. Actually, what you would say, hey, why you are talking about personal development? But this 80/20 rule, you can apply it on your personal life, and you can of course apply it on the mixing and the composition stage. So basically, to say it again, don't waste too much time on these little things in the foreground, right? So just push them. Okay, these are maybe some things you can do later on if you have the time, but first make the whole thing work, and then if you have the time left, invest the time you have left on these small moves. Oh boy, I talked for so many minutes about the same topic, but I hope you can take something away for yourself. Cool. What else? Yeah, maybe to the guitar part. I had this again from the Keep Forest. There was this guitar pad, and I wanted to, yeah, just to have it there as well. So basically, yeah, they play almost the same things here as well. So it's a combination, double combination. It's basically I could leave the electronic guitar on itself and make it maybe more loud in volume, right? But I wanted to have a different sound in this scene, not only the electronic guitar, but just wanted to support it with this guitar pad from Keep Forest. Yeah, and the last instrument for today is the low octave piano. So plays basically the same notes what the strings are doing, and yeah. So again, F, C, D flat, C, B flat, C, A flat, B flat, F. If I'm not mistaken, this is what I have composed weeks ago. Cool, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I yeah, just hope that you can take again something away for yourself, even if this is just one little thing. This is what my personal success is all about. This is super, super important for me. I will see you in the next one. Take care, be amazing, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye, guys.